Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start our video with a story in which our OP deprived his evil coworker of a promotion. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Destroying my coworker. After college, I was recruited by a company to take part in a paid internship in a foreign country. The company was American, and so were most of my coworkers, but there were several international offices, and I'd landed a spot in a pretty popular one. Now, I hadn't gotten this job based on my looks. In fact, if I hadn't been studying a foreign language, Persian, I absolutely wouldn't have gotten the gig, and that was made clear to me from the start of it. While the everyday work had literally nothing to do with Persian or any countries that speak the language, there was occasionally the need for a translator specifically in that language, and the company had no one else who fit that role. My Persian wasn't perfect by any means, but I promised them that it was a work in progress and that it would suffice. I was hired with 3 other paid interns, one of them a tall, socially awkward man named Skylar. Now, simply put, Skylar had no idea when to shut up. His routine, and I was convinced that he practiced this, was to rudely start conversations with people by asking uncomfortable, personal, or out-of-place questions, and then follow up these questions with a devil's advocate kind of conversation. Nobody enjoyed being around Skylar, and he wasn't emphatically good at the job, but I paid little mind. Skylar had been studying the language native to the country we were living in. He frequently and loudly criticized me for not learning or being interested in this language, but I maintained that it was in my very best interest to study and perfect my Persian, and noted that I had a pretty good set of relationships with the Persian-speaking immigrant community. No harm done, right? Not right. One day at work, as I'm coming back from lunch, Skylar, sneering, informs me in front of the other 2 interns that he convinced my supervisor that he could translate a Persian language document with Google Translate alone, and that I wasn't needed for that role. My supervisor let him take a stab at it and gave him back a fully translated document a little bit later. He then said to me that it seems my language abilities were not necessary in the first place. To this day, I don't know why I didn't just push him out the 7th story of that building, which we were on. I went back to the office after lunch, and sure enough, my supervisor confirmed that Skylar was able to translate the document. Look, some people have different interests. You like football, I like basketball. You study this foreign language, I study Persian. There's no need to degrade my interests, and certainly no reason to professionally threaten me over different interests. I politely asked my supervisor if he'd like me to double-check the document. He thought that'd be a good idea. Great, let's take a look at this translation. First sentence, wrong, really wrong. Second sentence, wrong. Third sentence, wow, impressively wrong. Remember when your Spanish teacher told you that you couldn't use Google Translate and that you might confuse simple words like BEE and BE? Skylar had done that for something like 6 pages straight. He translated a document that didn't actually translate to the correct verbiage. By the end of it, it became clear to me that Skylar had made up a lot of what Google Translate couldn't clarify. I took my supervisor aside and started nerding out on Persian language facts, showing him simple grammatical inconsistencies in the translation, and eventually pointing out how the overall message of the text is changed entirely from start to finish. I underscore that Skylar didn't just get this wrong, he pretended to have it right when he didn't get anywhere close. To his credit, my supervisor rolled with this, gave me a smile, and closed the issue. Skylar wouldn't be doing any more language translations. Except over the next few weeks, all the more important projects came my way. Things that Skylar and I would normally divvy up became my responsibility. Months passed, and I would go so far as to offer through my supervisor to take on a few additional reports or projects from Skylar's workload to ensure they got done quickly. And I'd get them. Nothing that was too difficult, but always the exact projects that I knew Skylar was looking forward to. As the internship came to a close, word spread that one of us would be offered a permanent job. Skylar had been talking about this since the internship started almost a year ago, but we all knew what was going to happen. The boss gave him a handshake and thanked him for working with us and let him know that he'd be considered for anything that came up in the future. I was asked to step into another room to negotiate salary. I later got confirmation that Skylar's stunt with the Persian translation was a big red flag to the supervisors there about what kind of work he was capable of doing, and led to him becoming a low-quality intern pretty quickly. Oh, and my Persian got much, much better. So F you, Skylar, for ever telling me what language I was obligated to study, or how my hard work was all for nothing. And our next story. Come on, take the money. Okay, so this happened over 20 years ago when I was in my early 20s. I worked at a convenience store. Our store had a small room built on the outside where we placed cans and bottles into big bags to return to companies who distributed beer or soda. Oregon gave us a refund of 5 cents each, but now it's 10 cents. Anyway, one day at the end of my swing shift, it was about 10 or 10:30 p.m. I believe it was my Friday, so I wouldn't be back for at least 2 days. I was in the bottle room sorting bottles I took on my shift. I hear a, "Hey." I look up and it's a regular we got in there, a 12-year-old kid. Edit. I'm putting in an edit because it was an approximation. He was just a regular, didn't know much else about him. He says, "Hey Joe, could you buy some beer for me and my friends?" I was surprised. "What?" "Nah, man, I'm not risking my job for that." Kid says, "Come on, man, it'd be easy for you, and I'd owe you one." I told the kid no again and said, "I'm not risking my job, not risking the fine, up to $5K, and have no money." Kid says, "Here, take a 20, and holds up a $20 bill. "Nah, man, I'm not buying beer, dude." I repeat myself. This back and forth has been going on for 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm getting irritated. I tell him no again. Again, he says, "Come on, take the money." I look at him and take the 20. Kid says, "Cool, I'll wait behind the store." I don't say anything as he leaves the room. I leave it and lock the door. I walk in and look at my coworker. I tell him the kid tried to get me to buy him beer, and when I told him no, he kept insisting I take the $20. I told him I took it and it's an annoyance tax. I told him have a good night and left. About a week or so later, the kid's in the store. He's looking at candy. He waits until no one's there and comes to the counter. "Where's my money?" he asks. I look at him. "What money?" "My $20 for the beer you were supposed to buy," he says. "I told you I wouldn't buy you beer, and after that you insist that I take a $20 bill," I say. He gets all red in the face. "You better give me my money back or else." I lean in towards him. "Or else what? You gonna call a cop?" The kid looked surprised and he walked out defeated. Never came back in again when I was working. Edit. Need to clarify a couple things. I was a young kid at the time, like I said, early 20s. I was very strict on following the rules. I lived in the neighborhood, well, a couple blocks over, and it really was the hood. I tended to be pretty cool with everyone. I'd even loan someone a few bucks if they needed it, and I had it. But everyone knew not to push me. If I said no, it was no. And our last story. How I lost my company over 1.5 million pounds. Okay, so here's some context. I work for a very big company in the UK as a delivery driver. So big that they're pretty much immune from failure. There was a major scandal about them some years ago, and it's barely slowed them down. In my department, we have a fleet of 22 vans. Part of our job requires that we perform daily safe and legal inspections of the vans. During these checks, we're supposed to identify any issues that would mean the van is not road legal, as well as any developing faults, etc. It's all a bit shady. While I could outright refuse to drive a van that was not road legal, it's sort of expected that we overlook more minor issues such as damage or engine lights, even if this could cause problems down the line. In short, our safety checks are more a case of kick the can down the road unless the can just hit the wall. Around the time this all kicked off, we had a new area manager. Let's call him Dickie. Dickie had a real chip on his shoulder about the fact that he grew up in a rough neighborhood and very much thought he was always the smartest guy in the room. I'd flown under his radar for a while because I just did my job, didn't cause issues, and generally got compliments from customers. I was notifying my supervisor and department manager one day about a faulty headlight on my van that still didn't work after replacing the bulb twice, so most likely a faulty relay. Dickie just had to involve himself in this. He began to interrogate me over what checks I was doing. When I was able to answer every single question for him, he changed up his tone and began to ask me what steps I took on my personal vehicle, continually standing closer and closer to me, generally invading my space. Eventually, he decided I wasn't allowed to drive a van with a faulty headlight in the middle of a sunny day and swapped me to another van. I was so irate by his aggressive attitude that I decided I'd do my checks to excruciating detail. First van he gave me, I had declared unroadworthy due to the damage to the tire. The second van was not roadworthy because of a number plate light. The third van was okay to drive, but I found several issues to defect on it. With 2 vans down and a third with several faults, the company was out of pocket for about £1,500. And thus began my campaign of malicious compliance. Every day, I would find fault with vans. At least 3 times I had vans taken off the road. This was costing the company hundreds a week. Eventually, my department manager asked me to stop, saying I'd made my point and Dickie was getting stressed since head office wanted to know why there was a sudden influx of damage costs. But I didn't stop for about 5 months. I defected vans, costing the company anywhere from £1,000 a month to £8,000. Best month was $8,128. Head office had enough. They called for an independent audit of our department and decided that the vans were far too worn and that it would make sense to update the whole fleet. 22 new vans came in later that month for around £75,000 a van. That's £1.76 million. Dickie was managed out shortly after we got the new fleet. Apparently, he'd been promising to cut costs in our store, and $1.76 million is not a cost cut. My department manager wanted me gone too, but had no way to justify sacking me since I had literally just done my job. Eventually, he put me forward for an apprenticeship. At the end of the apprenticeship, I get a job that pays almost twice what my current one does, so it's a win-win. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.